You ready? Ready? Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know why you're all sitting in the back row up there. We don't allow Bill Lindsay to sit up there or near. You're supposed to give a good example and be in the front row like a student should be. We've got a beautiful evening tonight. And the first thing I want to say to you is when you're going to school now, either as an undergrad or an MBA, and you get to know people in your classes, you get to working with people in your organizations, and they're sharp, build those relationships. Because the two guys that are going to speak tonight, though they were in totally different areas, ended up doing a great deal of work together, and they met when they were in school together. They were both at Thunderbird, and they met there. And Lawrence Maltz tells me he didn't do much studying and spent most of his time in the pool. And Dick Orfalea says that he was a football player and just, you know, got beat up all the time and stuff like that. But I kind of think they were a pretty good team. And you pay attention to what they've done in the world, the impact they've had in the world. And think about making relationships now that will last you for the rest of your life. Very important to see. Before we get started, John Wolahan and I have a wonderful task that we enjoy doing every time, and that is presenting you with a little memento of tonight.
Thank you.
Since you're flying to Mexico City tonight, I have a feeling your daughter is going to be taking it with her. By the way, Dick Orfalea's daughter is right here in front, and she's an LMU grad of 2005 in theater, and is about to start filming a movie in January. So she's moving pretty well. Good. We have the Conrad Hilton Distinguished Entrepreneur Award, and I'll read it so you don't have to worry about it. Celebrating entrepreneurial excellence, exceptional achievement, and powerful leadership. Presented to Lawrence Maltz and Dick Orfalea. And I'll read Lawrence's founding partner, COO, Starbucks Coffee Company. A creative, dynamic, and powerful entrepreneur, Lawrence Maltz was one of the founding partners of Starbucks and the chief operating officer. He also helped introduce Starbucks, Kinko's, Krispy Kreme, and Cold Stone Creamery to Asia through his firm, Borderless Investment Corporation. LMU is proud to honor his outstanding entrepreneurial excellence and powerful leadership. So we thank you kindly.
Thank you.
And we'll hold this for you. Now, John, there's a little difference there. Maybe I should read it a little bit. You can't read it. I have to read it. No. You hold it.
All right.
All right? Yeah. Dick Orfalea, founding partner, Kinko's, CEO, Kinko's International. Creative, dynamic, and powerful entrepreneur, Dick Orfalea was one of the founding partners of Kinko's and the president of Kinko's International. He successfully introduced the Kinko's concept to Asia and Europe and is active in several other entrepreneurial businesses as well as community activities. LMU is proud to honor his outstanding entrepreneurial excellence and powerful leadership. So we thank you kindly. Thank you. Good.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
We'll take them off your hands.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
What they're going to do now is both of them are going to give you a little bit of info on their background, on their adventures, on their absolute grand trip through life in the entrepreneurial area. And Lawrence Maltz is going to go first, and then Dick Orfalea, and then they want to open it up to questions. So be thinking about good questions so that we can show them how good our LMU students are. All right? Fair enough? Good.
Okay.
Have at it, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for asking us here tonight. When I drove up to campus, I just couldn't recognize all the development that had taken place here and how beautiful an environment this is for you all. I have to relate a couple of stories about my experience with Loyola to you. When I was in high school, during one Christmas vacation, my father always wanted to make certain that I wasn't idle and that I had a job at every possible moment of free time. And so somebody told me during one of those Christmas vacations that Loyola was hiring people and they had a job over the holidays. And so I came up here and looked on the bulletin board, and there was a job as a Bible salesman. during the holidays, and it was Loyola would provide you the Bibles on a kind of a consignment basis, I guess, and you were to go door to door selling the Bibles during the holiday season. And so I thought, well, that would keep my father quiet for a while. So I took the Bibles. I got the allocation was 6 Bibles, and stuck them in my car and started to go door to door trying to sell these Bibles. And Christmas vacation was coming to an end, and I hadn't sold any Bibles. And my friends told me it was because I was Jewish that I wasn't able to sell any of these New Testament Bibles. So on Christmas Eve, a friend of mine had a little party over at their house, and his father asked me, he said, well, Lawrence, what have you been doing? And I said, well, you know, and he was Catholic. And I said, Joe, I've been trying to sell these Bibles that I picked up at Loyola. And he says, how's it going? I said, you know, it's really not going very well. I haven't sold anything. And he said, well, how many Bibles do you have? And so I told him I have 6 in the car. I have to take them back to Loyola the day after Christmas. And he says, well, bring them in here. And he bought all those Bibles from me. So that's one very good memory that I have of Loyola. I think I made $100 after I paid Loyola what I owed him, and that was allowed me to have a pretty good Christmas. The other memory, if you will bear with me, I have is that when I was living in Japan, I was a football coach at a university over there called Kyoto University. And I had the bright idea that, and this was in the 70s, you know, I should bring a Japanese team to the United States and have a match against Americans. And so I contacted Loyola, and I think they had an intramural football program at that time, which I thought was terrific about our level of competition. And so we managed to bring a whole team of Japanese who had just been introduced to football over here. We had the game on campus here, and we lost 72-0. So those are some good and some not so good memories of my association with Loyola. Anyway, Fred has asked us not to give a speech, which is terrific, since I don't know how to do that. But you know, I would like to share a few stories, if you will, about some of the experiences that I've had, and Dick will do the same. I guess the 2 major influences in my business life have been my association with a company called AIG, which you may be familiar with as a financial services company, and a company called Starbucks. When I left Thunderbird, I was hired by AIG, and I was sent to Asia, where I stayed for over 10 years. And the story really starts with history of AIG, which I'm not sure all of you know, or any of you know for that matter. But AIG was founded by a Christian missionary's son in Shanghai in 1919. And this man's name was C.V. Starr. And Mr. Starr really didn't know what to do with himself. I mean, he'd graduated from Berkeley, and he was with his parents in China. And he decided that he could build a business based on providing something that the Chinese didn't have much of, and that was security. In those days, insurance per se was not a well-known concept, and certainly not available to a lot of ordinary Chinese people. And just as is the case for almost any of us, you know, security is an important thing to have in our lives. So Mr. Starr went to New York, got some American insurance companies to give him an agency. And he went back to China and he started writing insurance. And I think this is, illustrative of a simple truth that all successful businesses have to find for themselves. And that is, in this case, Chinese lack security. He recognized it. He found a way to solve the problem for them. AIG today is the largest company of its kind in the world. You may have read about it recently with Maurice Greenberg being in trouble with the SEC, and that's a very unfortunate thing, but the fact of the matter is they've recovered almost all of their market capitalization since that event. The simple truth, okay? Sometimes people tend to overcomplicate ideas. Business plans become too verbose, almost unfathomable in many cases. But while you're going through that process, if you ask yourself, what is the simple truth I'm trying to address here? I think that will help guide you as you go through the process of deciding what you want to do. In the case of Starbucks, there was also a simple truth. In 1986, when Howard Schultz, myself, and a few other guys bought Starbucks from the original founder, Jerry Baldwin, who founded Starbucks in Seattle, had 6 stores in 15 years. We also recognized a simple truth that we based our business on. Or I should say truths, if I'm pronouncing that right. Half the people in the United States drank coffee every day. And most of them didn't like it. I mean, it's not complicated. Those of us that are old enough can remember those days. And this was the basis of our business. It was not about anything more complicated than that. There were a couple 100 million people, or a little less than that probably, that drank coffee every single day and were dissatisfied. Howard had been in Italy, and he saw the coffee culture in Italy. And he said, why not? Why can't we do that here and base our success on the dissatisfaction of all these people? So that was the founding simple truth, if you will, about Starbucks. And we are not a perfect company, by far. Sometimes I read things about Starbucks, and it sounds like, we can't make any mistakes, and that's not the truth. But what we were able to do is stick to some basic principles. And we went through a terrible time. The first 3 years, we lost money. And we were looking at each other, because we didn't have that much money, and we had put everything we had in the company, and we were saying, you got your resume out there? Because, it didn't look good for us. It really didn't. We made a lot of mistakes. Sometimes we fell in love with our own belief without recognizing what the market was telling us. But through the years, we figured it out, with great people. That's what it was all about. It was trying to attract people that shared the passion and, more importantly, knew more about running a company than Howard did or than I did. We always said that if you hire somebody that doesn't know more than you, you're wasting your time. And that was another basic principle of the company. And we were able to convince very talented people to take very small salaries and a lot of stock options to come and help us develop the idea. The other thing we did, which I think if I may use the whiteboard here for a minute, was really critical and continues to be critical to whatever success we've achieved. Can't pay for ink around here, huh? Is we early on recognized what the hierarchy in the company was going to be. And in looking around in our company at that time, and I think we had about 15 stores then, it was clear to us that most of the people that worked in the stores worked part-time. They were students, they were budding screenwriters, they were budding actresses or actors like Tori. They had other aspirations besides being a barista at Starbucks. I mean, that was the reality that we were faced with. So we figured out that in order to overcome the natural inclination of people that have a part-time job, we had to do something different because we wanted to provide good service. But it was difficult to do that with the mindset that part-timers have or had. So we recognized three constituencies in our world. One were our co-workers. One, customers. Another one was shareholders, because we had to go out and raise money as we went along and to reinvest for growth. So we decided, okay, that's our world, that's our universe. How do we rank those three things? And we decided very, very early on that the co-workers came before the customers, and the customers came before the shareholders. Now, when you look at that, you think, how can you put the customer second? Or many people think that. But in essence, we were putting the customer satisfaction first, but we recognized the customer was not going to be satisfied unless the people that were serving them were satisfied. I mean, how many of us have gone in and still go into places where you know that, you know, there's no enthusiasm, there's nothing behind the counter, there's no desire to try and do the simple things that make a customer happy. So we decided that this is going to be our way of working. But then we said, how do we do that? We knew intuitively it was the right thing to do. But, you know, it's like everything. It's about implementation. It's easy to say. It's not so easy to do. So we surveyed the people that were in the stores. And without going into a lot of detail, we asked them, I said, what matters to you? You know, what are you worried about? Where do you want to go? And the thing that came back to us very, very strongly, time and time again from everyone, is like the Chinese in 1919, they were worried about security. Because in this country, if you get sick and you don't have insurance, you're not in good shape. And this was a major concern of part-time workers, and I venture to say still is, at least in our industry, the retail industry. So we were able to convince, after a lot of argument, the board, that it was the right thing to do for us to offer full medical and dental benefits to everyone in the company, even if they just work 20 hours a week. And you can imagine the reaction that some of our very sophisticated board members had saying, how can you afford to do that? Those premiums are going to be extraordinary. That's a high-risk group, so on and so forth. So a guy in the company came up with a formula that demonstrated that the turnover in our industry, which is something even today close to 300% a year, was far more expensive for the company than any insurance premiums that we might provide to these people. If we could cut the turnover by even a modest percentage, we would be far ahead of the game. And we would create pride of association with our coworkers. In other words, they would feel valued. Then, on top of that, while we were still a private company, we gave stock options to everyone. Everyone at Starbucks that works 90 days has the same program today as we had back then in the late 80s. And, we've been very blessed that the company has done well, and those people, even though there are a lot of them still very, very young, have also done really well for themselves. So it's again going back to this idea of the simple truth, okay? Your coworker is your customer. And I don't, in my belief, I think that applies to any organization, any industry, not just selling coffee. So, to me, that was the single most important thing we did to ensure our success. And we are not perfect. I get bad service in our stores. I see stores that are dirty. I see stores that don't know how to make an espresso. But we keep trying. And I think that we probably do as well, if not better, than most other companies in our industry. Everybody's made out okay. The shareholders certainly have. And so I just wanted to give you a couple insights about that. It's not complicated. Sometimes, you have to disenthrall yourself. And that's a very important word that was used by Abraham Lincoln before the Civil War. You have to disenthrall yourselves of a lot of preconceptions in order to have not just success, but really meaningful success. Thank you.
Am I standing in the right place? I think what's very interesting, if you look at the biographies of both of us, we did being in business school. When I first met him, he wanted to do tomatoes in Australia using the same technique. I wanted to be in the advertising. My roommate wanted to be a banker. I wanted to be a banker. And if you just look at our paths, we both were in the apparel industry. We've gone all over like this. I will predict that 80% of the people in this room will have the same career path. And most of you will probably wind up in an area that you didn't imagine now. When you look back at the area you want to go into, you said, God, thank God I never got there. But I'm just going to make that prediction. 20, 30 years, I'll still be back here, and I'm going to ask you that. I want to talk a little bit about Kinko's. I think everybody here knows Kinko's. I think why this is interesting is the philosophy of Kinko's and the philosophy of Starbucks are very, very similar. Dee and I were up at Vancouver, Washington, looking at stores. What do you think is the first place he looked at for the Starbucks stores and I looked at for the Kinko's stores? I'm going to challenge all those campuses. No, we're looking at our stores. Where's the first place we walk in to see if it's a well-managed store?
The bathroom.
Who said that? You're right. Yeah. Now you could understand that for Starbucks, but at Kinko's as well. We knew he has the same. We would talk about this. Retail is very dependent on that manager. he had a pretty clean bathroom was a good idea, was a good indication that the store was pretty well managed. Kinko's, my brother founded Kinko's in 1974 at the University of Santa Barbara. Kinko's was a partnership. My brother had 130 different partners. I remember there was one guy that came in to install a telephone. My brother's very dyslexic. He taught here at this university. The guy came in to install a phone. Paul liked him. He said, "Do you want to be a partner?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, take over Ohio." His name was George Bogus. He's many times over a millionaire. I'm going to ask you another question. What other icon in American business started out as a partnership? In fact, the man wrote a book, The Man with 1,000 Partners. Everybody here has visited their stores. Is Jennifer here? Okay. Does anybody know? Anybody want to take a guess? The Man with 1,000 Partners. You guys should be reading these biographies of these business people. J.C. Penney's. J.C. Penney started a store. You walked in. He said, "I'll train you. You go out with partners. You open a new store." That's the way our Kinko's started. 130 different partnerships. We had a professor from the Harvard Business School. Marilyn Haney is here, but he knows that one of the guys at Harvard Business School is on our board. We have James Heskett, their best professors out there. They come out to Kinko's. And they couldn't believe a company was structured like this. We had a meeting. We invited everybody. You've been there. We invited co-workers, janitors, managers, assistant manager. My brother would be sitting over there, and we'd have a discussion because we like to argue and yell and scream. And people would tell my brother, "You're full of crap, Paul." We had a guy from Japan that opened our Japanese operation that couldn't believe that you talked to a chairman of a company. I don't think that and I'll leave it to the professors, I don't think that if you look at the spectrum of American corporations, there was any company that was really ever structured like Kinko's with the partnership concept. It got to be so. 17% of the people that used to call us at Kinko's wanted a franchise. The only way you could get into being what we call partner land is you had to work with the company for 5 years. And then my brother would say, "Hey, that's a pretty good person. You want to go to partner land? Yeah, okay, I'll give you a territory." The only thing we insisted is they had to put in some money. They would borrow $5,000 or $10,000, and Paul would lend them the rest of it. They wanted some of their equity in it. And I think other than Bill Gates probably Paul's created more. Bill Gates and the guy at McDonald's was probably created more than he was. I'm going to just take a minute more. He and I spoke. What's interesting about what he said is, if you got Kinko's people together and you got Starbucks people together, they would spend 2 hours talking about how do I motivate, we've done this, how do I motivate the person behind the cash register? Because both companies had legendary customer service, and we were really committed to customer service. And that was the tiebreaker, our customer service. Shall I open it up for questions, or shall we go on with what you're doing? We can talk more than our 10 minutes, I think.
No.
Why don't we just let it kind of flow organically rather than, you guys go to Catholic school, I went to Catholic school, a syllogism, major, minor, conclusion. We're not going to do that. We're just going to tell you some more stories, but I think you're going to hear the same thing over and over again. Customer service, commitment to your people. I just want to say one thing when you talk. We did the same thing. We looked at our people behind the cash register. They're 50 years old. Many are married, have kids. We said, argued at the board meeting, give them dental. The human benefits department said, you can't afford to do that. We said, I don't care. Give those people dental care for their children, full dental care. And it was exactly the right thing to do. I'm just pick up one of it. If you gave stock options, we were not the type of company that could give out stock options, but we had profit sharing in our stores. Many of our managers earned over $100,000 a year, which is unheard of in retail. In fact, we developed our internal system for P&L for the stores so that we could pay the manager, assistant manager, and the co-workers their profit sharing every month. We didn't develop it so we could see the profits. That was called a pay sheet, and then we paid the money over there. Paying your people, you know, Paul, hope there's no one from the press here. But my brother was, reporters were tailing him, and he used to say internally, and I can tell you this, he said, listen, making money is like heroin. Literally. You get your people and they start making money, real money, and it's like heroin. So I'm going to stop.
Does that make you the heroin dealer?
I suppose so. But it's a very
For tradition, I'm going to ask our friend Eric up here to ask the first question. Let me give a quick introduction to Eric. He was my student a few years ago. He won international award for having the best social entrepreneur business as a student in the world. So he's one of our LMU proud.
I just want to ask, at what point did you feel most that you were risking, because you could have had really, really good jobs. I'm thinking about you when you were at AIG and then you decided to go to Starbucks. Like, at what point did you feel like, oh my God, there's no net under me? Because that to me is entrepreneurship. So I want to know when did you feel most at risk in this path to where you are now?
Well, as I mentioned, when we started out at Starbucks, we lost money for 3 years. And it wasn't comfortable. And what was really uncomfortable is that we kept making mistakes. We didn't understand what business we were, which is a flaw that I think a lot of businesses are afflicted with. You'll notice when I talk, I never talk much about coffee, because I don't believe we're in the coffee business. We kind of recognize, you know, some things about our customers as well as the co-workers, and that is, back in the mid-'80s, you know, life was getting to be very frantic. I mean, you know, technology was catching on, and people were just, you know, all over the place. And we kept thinking, well, we're in the coffee business, we'll just keep selling coffee. We went to Chicago, where you get a cup of coffee for 50 cents. And we introduced Starbucks lattes, and people said, you know, what the hell is this? Who needs this? And we wanted $1.50. So it did not work. It didn't work. And then we realized that we really were not in the coffee business. We were in what we describe in a couple of different ways. We were in the oasis business. We were in what Howard has talked about as the third place business. We were about providing an environment, non-threatening, especially for young women who, that was the days of Mr. Goodbar, if any of you have ever read that book, where, you know, they could socialize and safely. No one's hitting on them. You know, there was no alcohol. We said we're never going to serve alcohol. We're never going to allow smoking. So I think that, to some degree, people appreciate the fact that they can go to a Starbucks, do their homework, meet their friends, you know, write their screenplay, and nobody is going to bug them. And so that's really what business we are in. And the fact that we believe that the coffee is very good is an important aspect of it. That even today, by our best estimates, and I'm not up to date with this, about 20% of the population of the United States drinks Starbucks. And you look around here and you'd say everybody drinks Starbucks, but it's not true. It's not true. A lot of people do not like the taste of Starbucks. Maybe you. But, you know, okay, they don't like the taste of Starbucks. Well, we thought, this is our product, this is what we want to do. So you know, whatever business you're in, you have to look at the repeat purchase cycle. You have to. Because while only 20% of the people in the United States are drinking Starbucks today, most of them drink it 2 or 3 times a day. And that is the essence of the power of the company. It's not only the loyalty of the co-workers, it's the loyalty of the customers. So unless you are answering that repeat purchase cycle question, you know, I don't think you can develop the kind of business that at least we have.
Let Dick answer that a little bit too.
I'm just gonna tell you, I worked at Citibank in New York as a banker. I always felt at risk of banks and the big businesses. Entrepreneurship, I think you know your risks. You know, there's the formula of 9 to 1. They say if you hit 1 home run out of 9 investments, you're gonna make it. Well, we did some venture capital. I never got the 9 to 1. But at least I knew my risks. I think you left a big major corporation. I left. And if I had to say one reason why I left, it was all corporate BS. We talk about customer service. These are 2 companies that really, customer service is what it's all about. And that means driving it through the employees. I was a banker. We brought in, did a joint venture with Citibank to put banking into our stores. I will tell you that the fall of banking is because bankers are not customer service oriented. I'll just take one other piece of thread. I have noticed, I'd like to get your reaction to this. I can't mention the companies, but the companies that really rely on the data processing, their systems, the old Wells Fargo Bank believe very heavily in their systems. The tellers don't count. I have noticed that those type of businesses in the long run do not do well. Obviously, you need the systems. If you rely on the systems, there's a small retailer, I think you know as well as I do, started by a woman, and I met her husband, Stanford graduate, and all they would talk about is this computer system. Both my brother and I, we looked at it and said, these people are not going to be really successful in rolling this thing out. Because it's not about computer systems. It's about your people and your dedication and commitment to customer service. I kind of went off on a little tangent there. So thank you.
Let's start with questions over here. Yes, sir.
When both of you were looking at going international, what kind of decisions did you make in terms of, did you look at whether you'd exhausted the domestic business, or were there simple truths that you were following to try to go after international business that seemed more appealing?
Can I take that first? I can give you a strategic answer why we went, and I can give you a personal answer. We both went to Thunderbird. We both love overseas. We wanted to go overseas. I pushed our company into it because I wanted to travel to Paris and do all this other stuff and do international business. But then I was smart enough to make a strategic component. You can always do that to it. But he loves overseas. He loves overseas business, and so do I. So, how was it?
I think, you know, I would agree with it. It's personal. It's really personal. Having said that, though, it's also smart, as most American companies have found out, some of them too late. You know, I just sold my company in China back to Starbucks. Maybe you read about the Wall Street Journal today. And Starbucks has identified China as the largest market in the world. This is not some way in the future kind of idea. This is very, very soon. So, McDonald's is another example. Microsoft is another example, where these companies are now earning close to half their revenues from outside the United States. This goes to what I was talking about. We have to disenfranchise. America is not the center of the world. We It is not.
I don't think to that. Many companies, it's very difficult, particularly for a public company, to commit to going international. Let them talk about it. We had a president from, it happened to be from Walmart. I met the head of the Walmart when they were going international. And I said, do you honestly, can you put in the box and wait 15 years? If you're gonna go international, you better be thinking 15 years down the road. Can you really do that and put that on the table? And he said, I'm not sure our shareholders will do it. I know when you were in Starbucks, you pushed and people said, can we, you guys did it and you committed to it. But most companies, it's lip service commitment. They won't do it. We'll go in, a few guys go over there, a few pioneers. If they fail, we'll shoot these guys. I have found that the commitment to really go international, you have to have it from the top. Everybody has to believe in it, and you've got to be able to. We have a friend of ours that invested with us in Starbucks and Kinko's in China. Is that a pretty, would you say, two pretty good concepts? We were over the startup phase, follow-up stuff you go through, losing money, and he turned to me one day and he said, you know, it's a miracle when you make money. And I said, yeah, to be an attorney. I said, you know, Dave, to myself, I said, you're learning. But this is not, and the average American company says, yeah, we're going to go out there and we're going to do it. It takes a tremendous commitment. He was with one great financial institution. I was with Citibank in New York before it was a real bank, before these new guys took it over. We earn 65% of our earnings in international. Many of our best people in the organization, what it does for people, their vision, training people, all of those types of things. But I would say that there's only more than a handful, but 10% of the American corporations that do international business are really committed to it, and the rest are just there because China's dollars.
Middle here, way up on top.
Hello, my name is Victoria Gordon, I'm an executive MBA student. My question is for Mr. Maltz. You've obviously been very successful in your international ventures. Well, my question to you is, what was your thought process when you were in the Chinese hotel handing out coffee? What were you expecting to learn? What did you learn? And what advice would you give to executive MBA students planning our international trip to execute our business plan in India and China?
What was I thinking when I was saying it? What the hell am I doing?
That's the academic answer.
I was thinking of really dumb. That's exactly what I thought. Let me just tell you a story that illustrates it. This was over 10 years ago, right? And you've done a little research, so you know that this is how we started. Starbucks wouldn't, I had retired and formed this company, and Starbucks was my first client, and they wouldn't let me open retail stores in China until we sold coffee to the international hotels, wholesale coffee. And we built coffee bars inside these international hotel lobbies. And, we trained people, we put the equipment in, and we did all that stuff. And we waited for the sales to happen, and nothing happened. We didn't sell anything. I mean, literally, we didn't sell anything. And so, we thought, well, maybe accidentally we would sell something, but it didn't happen. And we found out that in those days, the commercial transaction between the person who was serving the coffee and the person who was buying the coffee, who was usually a foreigner because they were in the international hotels, was so uncomfortable for our Chinese co-workers that they told people the equipment was broken. And it didn't work. Swear to you. Okay? So, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's not something I learned in business school to deal with. And I would venture to say that those kinds of experiences are repeated over and over in a different way with most companies that go international. It's perseverance. It's being open it's this disenthralling yourself. Because without the ability to do that, you're just gonna fold your tent and walk away. I can't handle this. What am I doing this for? So, does that help you?
Yes, it does, thank you.
Okay.
In the front area here. Okay.
How has the availability and cost of consumer products like an espresso machine or a scanner and laser printer affected your business strategies?
The availability? You mean internationally or domestically?
Or domestically, like I could go to the store and buy an espresso machine.
Right.
How has that affected the way that you do business?
Are you asking, is that the fact that people can make coffee at home by buying a machine from us in the store reduce our sales? Probably. Yeah, it probably does. You can't measure it. But I don't think that's the point. And that is why I talked about this third thing, this experiential part of the company. Okay? Right? Kinko's, you've got copiers at home, you've got scanners, all that. Yeah. If there weren't any coffee machines in the house, and they couldn't get coffee in the house, maybe our sales would increase, but I suspect we introduced a lot of people to the coffee experience. They took it home, and the net result was positive.
We never looked at the costs. We never had a budget in our company, so we were very. There was no business machine produced in the United States. Xerox's largest customer, Apple's fifth largest customer. There was no business machine produced in the United States that did not first come to Kinko's. We didn't care about the cost structure. I mean, we were able to bring these guys down, wrestle them down on costs. How did you bring Xerox down? We're their biggest customer, commercial customer. We only had to say one word to bring the cost down from Xerox. What do you think that word was? Kodak. And then we told Kodak, Xerox. We brought them down to there. But we didn't really look at the cost structure. What we did is we looked at the machines. We got our partners together, like in this room. We would say, what do you guys think of this thing? How many of you have no guts, no glory? Will 50 of you partners go out and try one of these machines and tell us what happens to it? The guys that took over our company, we sold our company out. The guys that took over, all out of McKinsey, all of these other type of Harvard guys like Amir up here, they would never test anything because they would filter it and say, oh no, the customer's not going to go for that. We said, we want the machine. We'll figure out the cost. Kodak showed very early on when they came out with some type of digital print. And what we debated for hours is how can we market this? How can we tell our customer, tell them the story very simply. And my brother always used to pound the table, charge more. We're going to give it too cheap. We had a certain formula. Once we could pound these vendors down to the ground, and we did a good job of pounding them. We would then say, okay, let's make sure we're getting the type of market. We wanted the machine, because exactly what you said. The scanners are coming in. We're in the technology business. You've got to be able to grow. I will tell you this, and the same thing. We were the fifth largest customers of PCs. My brother or myself do not know how to use these. And there's method to our madness. Because when we would see a machine, we would say, what does it do for customers? And I'm just going to add one other thing. If you want to, it used to be the old story in the business, a good salesman will bankrupt your company because if you sell too much. Today, people in data processing will bankrupt your company. We spend $10 million a month. I could never figure out where the money's going. I gave a similar talk at a business school, and I talked to the head of the computer department. I said, listen, if you can do anything for us in business, teach these people to speak plain English and be able to communicate what is going on. And I was in the banking business. You want to go out and see capital investment, go to Bank of America, any bank you could mention, go out and look at their data processing departments. You will see, IBM has sold these guys. You talk to these people, you better know what's going on in the systems area, because these people are generally dancing to a different.
Over on this side. Well, we'll go up there with you then. You, yeah.
This question for Mr. Mills. Because of your groundbreaking idea with offering full benefits to part-time employees, how did you convince the people you were trying to raise capital from that you were going to have a profitable business? Because I'm sure it's probably
Well, I think I mentioned the fact that we developed, a real formula that said, if we can cut turnover by X%, that would be more beneficial to the bottom line than, and pick business, than having this huge turnover. So from a selfish financial point of view, we were able to demonstrate that. I mean, the fact, what's more important, it was the right thing to do. It was morally, and I want to stress, it was morally the right thing to do. Even today, companies in the United States, very few of them do it. They should do it, but they don't. So, when you think about joining a company, if you decide to do that rather than start your own business for a while, and I think that could be a great experience if you choose wisely. If you choose a company wisely, I always say, it's not that the company's interviewing you, it's that you're interviewing the company. So you've got to look at those kinds of values, if they're meaningful to you. And you've got to really probe and find out whether they exist. Because in most places, they don't. Okay?
The next question is coming from Dick here to you.
And then I want
I'm
to,
in trouble now.
and I want to give it to him, and I want to also ask myself, so after he's through. Selecting people, interview. What have you learned?
What am I learning?
Yeah, what are you learning? You never.
That's probably more accurate. You have to have some shared understandings and values. You have to have, touchstones that you understand sometimes without words. My major contribution to any company that I've been associated with or invested in is hiring people. In Starbucks' case, hiring people to replace me. I mean, I'm a big believer in that. Orrin Smith, who I hired as the CFO for Starbucks, let me just tell you, he was the chief financial officer of the state of Washington. And Harvard MBA, brilliant man, wonderful person. So we went through this whole dance and everything about we couldn't afford to pay him even a quarter of what he was making in his salary. It just wasn't on. We didn't have the money. And he said to me when it came down to actually deciding whether to take the job, he asked me, he said, Lawrence, how much do you make? And I told him, he says, I'll take the same. And believe me, I wasn't making much money at all. Okay? So I don't know that that's a difficult question to answer. And I think, it has to do with, first of all, knowing yourself, knowing what's important to you, and then having some understanding of human nature. And I think for all of you that are in business school, I don't know if you take philosophy or psychology classes, but when I asked myself, would I have done differently? It wouldn't have been that I should have taken more finance or more marketing or anything like that. I would have learned more about human nature.
He wants to answer his own question now.
What a setup.
Yeah.
We had to roll up the company, and then we brought some investors in to sell it. And during that phase, we brought in, there was psychiatrist named Pierre Mornell that only deals with very high level type of guys. And he invited me to a class on interviews. He's written 2 books on interviewing. And he went around, there was a guy from KKR there, it was me and some other people. And he went around and he said, okay, just to start the class, or the group here, how much does a bad hire cost you? 2 of us put up $1 million. I can honestly say a bad hire cost us $1 billion. So then he came to us and he said, okay, everybody, he gave his own technique for interviewing, and he said, look, or making this decision, and he said, what is everybody's technique? I said, it's a real key job. I'll tell you what you do. You go out there and you live with that person for like 48 hours and get drunk with them. Not because you want to ferret out some secret thing. This is about chemistry. I said, and I was very proud of myself at the end of the class. He said, okay, what was the best thing you got out of the class? And the guy from KKR said, that guy's idea. Go out and get drunk with him. Now this is a key decision you make in business. And he is absolutely right. In fact, there is a study, my brother said, but no one can ever find it. They took a bunch of teachers, psychiatrists, and business people, and they did a perception test against, I think there was a psychology, MMPI, and Minnesota Multi-Kids personality test. And they tried to correlate who did the best. It was a very good scientific study. The bottom line was successful, so-called successful businessmen were way up there and able to evaluate it. It's your lifeblood of your organization. Now, I'm going to just, even though I'm not authorized to do this, I'm going to say one other thing. I can't leave you without talking about planning, okay? And I'm only going to say, and I hope my friend Amir, we know the same professor, and I'm just going to quote the greatest planner of the 20th century, General Dwight Eisenhower. You all remember him? The word strategic planning comes from the military. He was a great planner. Biggest invasion, Normandy. Come to France, I live in France, I took you up to Normandy. Eisenhower said it best. Plans are worthless. Planning is everything.
One last question, because somebody right in here had their hand up a minute ago.
Okay. How do you ensure that your companies, when you go international, because both your companies are very representative of America, I guess you could say, how do you make sure you're not an imposition on a culture, or how you integrate with a culture without going against their cultural grain, I guess you could say?
We went joint venture. We were very afraid of that. We went joint venture on local people because we said, if we don't know, let them tell us. But it cuts both ways. I'll tell you 2 stories. We were in Holland. We opened in Holland, in Rotterdam. We have our Dutch partners. One of the people involved with the Dutch partners was, if you're familiar with a company called OSE, they're the European Xerox. We had their strategic planning. They told us, because our sales, first we were the first company to go 24 hours, which was great. And then our sales kind of flattened out. And in the U.S., what we do is we say, okay, we'll have a free copy day. Everybody can come in with up to 100 copies. Just we want to buy the customers. Or 2-cent copies. And they said, you can't do it here. This is Holland. That smacks of being cheap. Dutch will never go for it. So we said, well, what do we know? They know. So we listened to them. And so we finally said, well, would you just try it for us? You know, our sales are stalled out. So we go out and we have the sales. Guess what happens? Exact same thing happens in the United States. We have the same discussion in Japan. We have a young guy that's in there that's an MBA named Hiro. And we had a very tense meeting. We said, look, sales are maxed out. Go out and do a sale. Give the copies, up to 100 copies for anybody that walks in there. He said, I can't do it. I won't do it. My brother finally said, some of you know my brother, he sat down there and his boss was there and he said, listen, Dan, here's a check for $100,000 or $200,000. We'll pick it up. We won't charge you joint venture. Go out and do it. And this kid still didn't want to do it. His boss looked at him and said, here, go out and do it. What happens? Exactly what happens in the States. Sales, whatever. So it cuts both ways. You have to be very culturally aware. I mean, I think for us, going joint venture was the way because we just didn't know the international game. And I'm not sure you ever did. But it also, what works in America will work overseas, and you'll get resistance to it. So that was one lesson that I just wanted to learn.
That is a very good question. And I don't know if I know the answer. I just have experiences. One thing, that's helpful is that as you build an organization in the United States, like Kinko's or Starbucks or others, the tendency is that people from overseas write to you and ask to come and see you and say, we think your concept will work in our country. To me, those are the people that you have to respond to. Rather than, like a lot of companies do, slicing up the world and saying, okay, there's X many customers in China and Japan, and the political risk is lower here, and the rents are reasonable here, and so forth and so on. I think you have to be in more of a passive mood, and you have to, the Chinese have thousands of great things, but one I like particularly well is that when you go tiger hunting, you don't chase the tiger, you sit and wait for it to come to you. And I think that is how I would answer your question in this regard. Because then you can evaluate the person that's written to you. You can go over there, you can get drunk with them, like Dick says. You can meet their families some of the time. But they create their own enthusiasm rather than you selling them on your concept.
Okay, my man here wants one more question. It's okay.
I'm with the Executive MBA program too. And my question is, both of you have explained in the early years of Starbucks in this case that you have to compete with, Starbucks has a coffee in $1.50 and the other guys have 50 cents a coffee. So the question is, how do you compete with them? Only you don't drop the prices, or how do you convince the people?
Did you understand it back there?
Yes.
Let's repeat the question.
How do you compete with Starbucks? How do you go
I
after
think what
them?
he's saying is that when you have a high-priced product and somebody else is selling a similar product for a very low price, how do you compete?
Yeah. Okay. We had a coffee company, COFFEE, made this. My brother and this guy didn't get along because we wanted him in the coffee business. And I was walking, I lived in Glendale. We lived in Glendale. I was walking down the street, and Paul, my brother, who's a quintessential entrepreneur, said, listen, why doesn't a cousin of ours go out and go in the coffee business? And I said, Paul, there's coffee all over the place. How are you going to compete? You know what his answer was? Do it better. You can, listen, if you're in retailing, you go into Kinko's, every one of our, there's no secrets. If you don't understand our secrets, we haven't executed properly. It ultimately comes down to customer service, good location. I'm speaking on a retail basis. But that's the answer. Do it better. Look at the competition and say, what can I give these customers? We used to, I'll give you just an idea how we would train our people. When we ran the company, you'd come in for one coffee, 7-cent coffee, and we expected our people, if you'd been in before, to know your name before you got to the counter. I'm not saying it always happened. And we would also tell them, listen, that's not 7-cent coffee. That's, over the lifetime, you're worth $25,000 to our company. That's a $25,000 customer. Starbucks did exactly the same. I know these guys. We used to always benchmark. We're good friends. We used to talk about our business. You think our competitors, there's a lot of coffee shops out there would do the same thing. They weren't dedicated. They weren't focused here. On these two guys, really focused. coworkers, and the customers. And customer service is what it's all about. And I think that 90% of American companies just throw the corporate BS at them. They're not really concerned. Look at the banking business. I was a banker for many years. Customer service in a bank? Give me a break. Why is the banking business going like this relative to market share? There's no customer service. They don't even want to be in the banking business. They're in the data processing business. It's true. I was a director of a bank. I gave a speech in front of other directors, and the head of Bank of America's human resources was there, and I said, look, if you're not in the banking business anymore, you're in the data processing business. More people in data processing in the Bank of America than there is in bankers. They don't want to be in the banking business. No customers. And their market share. But they're going to, because they want to go in the computer business, who's going to be their competitors down there? EDS, Microsoft, people that really understand the data processing.
That's okay. He's retired. Working too hard already. Good folks, I hope you learned some lessons tonight. If nothing else, walk away saying that dignity and the pride and the loyalty of your employees is absolutely essential to your success. This is one of the key things I saw here tonight. And the other thing I would say is, most businesses have only a few core ideas, a few core things that cause the business to succeed or fail. It's not, you don't have to know 900,000 things to make it. You do a couple of the key essence things right in a company, and you got a shot at making it. Let's give them an awful big hand.